Today we have Brett Roberts, who is local, and then the rest of the crew. Actually, I know where Tom West is because he's spoken to our user group before. And not sure where Corey is, but why don't you just take it away and introduce yourself?
I'm currently...
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, hey, thank you. I really do appreciate the time. I will introduce or let Corey and Tom introduce and reintroduce themselves respectively. But I really do, appreciate you all letting us come and talk to you about the fun thing that we did in the weeks leading up to .conf this year, and kind of going through this crazy, wacky idea. So, Corey, why don't you introduce yourself, and then Tom, why don't you introduce yourself or reintroduce yourself?
Cool. Yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Corey Minton. I'm the guy that founded the Big Data Beard years ago, but I'm lucky to have a team of awesome folks, including Tom, Brett, and Kyle, who can't join us today, be part of the team. My day job is I'm an IT strategist at Splunk. So I joined Splunk about a year ago after spending 10 years at Dell Technologies, where I helped lead the Splunk technical practice for a number of years, and have been into big data and sort of data-centric technologies for the better part of the last 10 years. And I'm currently sitting in Destin, Florida, doing my quarantine. The family was exposed, and so we're hiding out in Florida to avoid any more exposure.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tom West. I am currently based in the UK and work for a Splunk partner providing professional services primarily at the moment for the NHS and helping them with their COVID efforts. So really busy from that front. Presented to the group before on an app that I've released called SPL Rehab, which helps debug searches. And since then was lucky enough to work with the rest of the team for the road trip that happened last year, putting the dashboards together for that, and then more recently the stuff that we've done for the Virtual Race To CONF20, and super excited to show you what we did and talk through how we did it.
Yeah, it's funny enough. I got introduced to Tom, or Tom kind of got introduced to the Big Data Beard team because of the SPL Rehab presentation he did. He had some pretty snazzy dashboards there. One of them was a countdown timer, I think. So I messaged Tom on the side saying, "Hey, how do you do that?" And next thing, he's giving us a lot of his hours to help create some really cool dashboards last year and this year as well. So thanks to the Boston User Group to kind of getting us connected.
Definitely.
Corey, do you want to kick it off?
Happily. So everybody, what we're going to do is we're going to walk you through the Big Data Beard's Virtual Race To .conf, but I figured somebody else could do it a little bit better than me. It's me. It's more me.
Welcome, everybody, to the Big Data Beard's session on the Virtual Race To .conf20. We had a lot of fun, and I'd love to invite one of our friends to kick us off. Here's Lando Norris, driver of the number 4 car for McLaren's F1 racing team. Lando?
I've never done this before, and I've always wanted to. So, ladies and gentlemen, please start your engines.
Well, hopefully your headphones were turned down a little bit. That might have been loud, but hopefully you enjoyed it. Here's the idea. We had this, 2020 was a weird year, and so we wanted to do a crazy event. And so we started this idea of the Virtual Race To .conf. And maybe you saw some of that in the weeks leading up to .conf, maybe you didn't. But our goal here today is kind of walk you through what that is and how we did it. So it was run by the Big Data Beard team. As I said, I started this team, but I am now not the most important member, because we've got Kyle, Brett, and Tom West really leading a lot of the efforts that we do. The Big Data Beard is a blog and podcast organization that's trying to share the nuggets of knowledge that we've learned in working in big data. And I'm excited to announce, I think maybe some of you have seen this, but your local boy, Brett Roberts, as well as the other 2 members of the Big Data Beard team, were announced this year as Splunk Trust members. So congratulations to our team. If you haven't seen the fezzes, Brett, have you got your fez yet? I don't know why you're not wearing it, if I'm honest.
It is not here yet. We are still waiting for it to be shipped. So soon, hopefully.
Oh,
yeah, that's mine from last year.
Their efforts were awarded. Well, so if you all remember, back in 2019, the Big Data Beard team did this crazy thing called the road trip to .conf, where we started in Boston, drove for 2 weeks across the U.S., ending in Las Vegas. We were piloting an RV that was outfitted with a ton of IoT gear that we were Splunking. We were forwarding it from our rolling data center out to Splunk Cloud, and we were monitoring everything from ride quality to environmentals to things like our bathroom usage and were we washing our hands after we use the restroom, because 3 grown men in an RV for 2 weeks, cleanliness is really what matters. We landed that RV on the floor of the conference, and we had thousands of people come through the RV, see what we had done, and really just hang out and kind of laugh at the crazy ways that we had used Splunk's data to everything platform to have some fun, but also inspire people to use their Splunk skills in new and interesting ways. And it was super fun to have us. Doug actually mentioned us on the keynote stage, and so it was a super fun year, and we left very inspired, like we always do from .conf. But 2020, as we were thinking about our plans, 2020 unfolded in a less than favorable manner for in-person experiences and so on. And so we had to rethink completely about what we were going to do something fun and splunky and exciting to get ourselves more hyped up about the .conf event. So that's where this idea of the virtual race to .conf came from. Basically, the idea is that we wanted to do something that was engaging and fun. So we figured virtual racing is a pretty fun thing. If you haven't gotten into sim racing, we'll talk about it in a second. But it was also something that we thought that, given Splunk's relationship with McLaren in 2020, that it might be a kind of a cool segue to introduce some of this, racing data as really interesting data for insight, and use Splunk to really derive that insight in a unique way. And so this is where the virtual race to .conf was born. It was a series of 10 races run at tracks virtually around the world on the iRacing platform, where we actually had broadcasts going on the Splunk Twitch stream and on the Big Data Beard channels in the 10 days leading up to the conference. And it was super fun. If you're not familiar, we used iRacing as the platform to host the races. iRacing is very much not a video game. It is very much a simulation platform. And by simulation platform, I think most people probably understand the difference, but it's the physics engine, the way that the cars drive and handle, and the way that you interact on track is intended to be as much like a track day racing experience as possible. It's not like a video game where you're driving around bouncing off walls. There's damage, there's all those things that you expect in a real driving experience, just done virtually, of course. To get up and running with iRacing, you do have to have a subscription, and it does only run really on a gaming PC. You have to have a pretty beefy gaming PC with a proper GPU to run it. We found that, you can get going for, on a budget rig, you could probably get going for about $1,000 because iRacing has been around for a while. So you don't have to have the latest and greatest, you don't have to have a 3070 GPU to run this thing. You can run a pretty low end GPU and still be successful. You do absolutely need a wheel and pedals. It's not one that you could really use a controller. I think some people have tried, but the experience is quite awful. And it does help if you get more immersive. So like if you have the ability to have that 3 monitor setup, you can see here, that's my mom practicing in my 3 monitor setup that I use during the race. But you can also do VR, which we've pretty much all of us have converted to now for our racing experience, because it is crazy cool, crazy immersive, and it's pretty great. And a sim seat obviously helps for getting yourself into the racing position, not having your wheel fall off your desk while you're trying to steer. Not that happened to any of the team here. And so the iRacing is great. You've got 80 plus tracks. There's a ton of cars that are super real. And it's frankly the platform that, all the other racing series, when they had to go virtual in 2020, it's the one that most of them used, like Indy and NASCAR. It's where their esports series are hosted. So we felt like it was a pretty cool platform, and it's one that hadn't been Splunked before. So that was a good thing for us. So let's look at what the experience in iRacing looks like behind the wheel.
As I've said, this is not a game. You have to be highly aware of the situation around you. In the pits, there's pit speed limits. You have to come out safely looking for those green cones. You have to enter the track safely, making sure not to impede the traffic. You also need to be super aware that the physics engine in this game recognizes that your tires are cold when you come out of the pit, so you got to take it easy on that first lap or two to get a little heat in those tires. It's one of those situations where track awareness really does win the day. Here we see two folks that are racing really hard, really tight, but the Splunk car in the rear is following pretty close going into this first turn. And guess what? That can bite you if somebody decides to brake a little earlier than you had anticipated. Being track aware is super important, not only if you're the one doing the passing, but if you're the one being passed. In this situation, we're approaching a car that's lap traffic, and we're trying to make a pass, but we recognize they're not going to make the turn in, so you got to be aware that that car is going to miss the turn, and you got to slow down and let them do their thing. And even simple things like going through a smooth
I just lost possibly all of Corey.
Oh. All right. Well, he's getting back. So I think the one thing though, what you're seeing here, every little turn, everything that you do in this simulator is creating massive amounts of data though. So even as you're going through the pit or you're accelerating or maybe going too fast in the pit, all that is creating some data that we were able to ingest into Splunk, and hopefully Corey can come back online in a second. But it was actually really incredible. And we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but when we started looking at the data that came out of iRacing, it was very, very data rich, and I think it was over 250, 300 different data points that we started to collect every third of I think it was like three data points a second or something like that. So we were definitely ingesting a lot of data so that we can get as real time as possible. And it was pretty incredible. So I'm going to pause here. Hopefully Corey can hop back in so we can continue the presentation. But in the meantime, does anyone have any questions or any comments on iRacing, or has anyone ever used iRacing before in the past?
Sorry, I'm back. Can you guys hear me?
We can. Yep. I was trying to stall the best I could.
No, my Wi-Fi adapter just turned off completely. So I don't know what happened there. My apologies.
No, I haven't really tried it before, but I'm already Googling to see how much sim seat is.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, when you think about the gear, invest in the gear. If this is something that you want to do, please invest in the gear. Like Corey said, the steering wheel and pedals, they are an absolute. I did try with an Xbox controller, and you can bounce into walls. You won't recover from that like you would in a video game, but you can absolutely bounce into walls. And the controller would pretty much guarantee that you're going to do that. From a racing seat standpoint, I got one that was collapsible because I do live in the city and I don't have a whole lot of space. So I thought it would be great to be able to put it under my bed or something like that. First time I sat into it and I started driving, I slammed on the brakes and the whole thing collapsed and I fell down. So just make sure that you do your research if you are going to buy a seat, because who said that virtual racing is not a contact sport, right? It was pretty painful.
Yeah.
Cool. Corey, do you want me to take it from here?
Yeah, I was just gonna say we can send out a link. We put together a kind of a gear guide of what it takes to get rolling with iRacing. And there's you can buy some pretty low end, kind of custom built gaming rigs for well under $1,000 that can run iRacing just fine. But you do need the wheel and pedals. We all use the Logitech. Most of us at the G920 or the G29, I think it is, which is the Sony or the Xbox wheels. And those are fine. I mean, you can spend tons of money on them, but the wheel's fine. The most important thing, like Brett said, is a stable platform for it. So getting either a proper sim seat, or even we found some of the just wheel and pedal holders that were pretty heavy duty metal, like worked pretty well, better than like trying to bolt it to a table, something that's purpose built.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the immersion of it's pretty important too. I did the actual race with just a single TV, and I really had trouble really going into turns. As you can see some of the videos, I was not really good at this. But once I went to VR, you could really feel like you're actually driving, and kind of as you're looking into the turn, you just control your car a lot better. So I highly recommend buying or using your VR headset and having some fun with that as well.
But if you've got some old pedals lying around or old steering wheel, then you'll find that if they're of any decent quality, they will also work at least to get you up to speed. I personally was using a G25 steering wheel set, which was 11 years old, hadn't been used for 6 years, and had gathered up 6 years worth of dust. Managed to find it in the back of a closet, and it still worked. Although, because my desk's an IKEA desk, it's not thick enough to really clamp down onto the desk. Didn't have any sort of mounts or anything, so just borrowed some of my son's wooden train track to make the desk thick enough. That worked fine. Interesting experience with wheels on the office chair, but that's a different matter altogether. As far as a starting place goes, it worked, and I beat Brett's butt.
Yes, you did, and another quiet clap for you there, Westy. Okay, so let's talk about the cars. And when we were planning this event and this virtual race to .conf, that we had a couple things that we wanted to focus on, and honestly, picking the right car was very important. As Corey mentioned earlier, Splunk's partnership with McLaren kind of led us to a no-brainer that we were going to incorporate some type of McLaren car. But after spending 17 days with Corey in an RV with an average speed of 40 miles an hour, we wanted to go pretty fast this time. Maybe average more than 100 miles per hour. So we wanted to go with a faster, higher class car, and we chose the GT3. When you're using iRacing, or you're just starting out with iRacing, generally speaking, you're not going to start with the GT3 class car. You kind of have to work your way up. Because we had our own special race, we were able to use these cars. So we used the GT3, and we kind of settled on the McLaren. But we also wanted to show some data diversity and kind of do some, ask the question, how does a McLaren perform versus another car? And if Brett's driving a BMW, how is he going to stack up against Westy driving McLaren? So we did want to add another car or two, or in Corey's case, 4 or 5, to the race, just so we can get some variance in data and kind of show the differences there, right? That's the power of Splunk. We can kind of compare things and correlate between different data sources. So these are the 2 cars that were actually in the race. 13 out of the 15 people drove the McLaren. Myself and Corey drove the BMW in the race. It's important to note too, though, that once you started with the car, you had to use that car for all 10 of the races, or else you would lose some points. So we stuck with the cars, and I will say honestly, the McLaren is a lot faster, but it's a lot harder to control. So for a newbie like me, who really, although I drive recklessly in Boston, doesn't really drive that well or faster, has never driven on a track before, the BMW kind of gave me the handling that I needed to get around the track. But when we start looking at some of the races, like the one that we did for race number 6 here, Daytona, where it's just all left turns in a circle, the McLaren definitely outperformed the BMW. So it was kind of a give or take there. But when we look at the racing series and what we did, we wanted this to be a truly global event. It wasn't just going to be North America. We wanted to incorporate as many of the continents as possible. So you can see here that we have races that from Australia to Japan to a few in the Europe continent, and then North America as well. And it was mostly road tracks. We only did one that was an oval, which was Daytona. Indy and Las Vegas had an oval component, but we also did the infield. But we wanted to make this as challenging as possible and really have a variety of different turns and things that would choke me up and make me run into the wall a lot easier. But it was I would say my favorite was Daytona because it was the easiest. But I think there are a lot of other fun tracks. Corey, what was your favorite?
It's perennially going to be Tsukuba because that is the only one that's the only one I won. So yes, that was clearly my favorite. But it's fun because it's like a go-kart track. It's like the track is too small for the size of cars. Like it's mostly for motorcycles, and it was riotously fun.
Yeah. Westy, what about you? What was your favorite?
Well, it's absolutely not Tsukuba. I being the victim of that collision that Corey was so helpful to demonstrate to everybody. It was probably race 9, Mount Panorama, just because I had a busted car at the beginning of the race and managed to, 30 minutes later, limp it into 3rd place, I think. So to get a podium finish there was something that I was really chuffed with.
Yeah, cool. Cool. All right, let's move on to the next slide. So now that we talked about the race and kind of choosing our cars and the tracks, let's talk about how we work to get the data into Splunk, right? That's really the heart and the meat of what we wanted to do, was to use Splunk for this event. So like I said earlier, while we were having some technical difficulties, iRacing in itself collects a ton of very valuable data, more than 400 data points that we were ingesting in the Splunk, every couple ingestions every second or so. Inherently, the export from iRacing is very unstructured and challenging to actually make some sense of it and really detail of it. But luckily, we turned to the open source community, and we found via GitHub someone that had already created an SDK for iRacing that took a lot of the data from iRacing and turned that into a JSON dump. So we were actually very easily able to get all of the different data points across, car performance, where you think of like speed and braking and oil pressure and tires and all that, to the track. Again, Corey, as Corey talked about earlier, this is a simulator. So the temperature of the track, the time of day, the humidity, all of that really played an important role in how your car was going to perform. The first couple laps of every race was very slippery, as your tires had to heat up and get warm. And that was definitely apparent in this simulator. We also did things around, we worked on getting things from our computer. Again, we had 15 different people racing, all of them having local computers. We wanted to get computer performance as well, and then session data. So all of these different areas we were able to ingest via the iRacing SDK. And then, so what we did was we used Splunk Cloud. We created a Splunk instance in, created a Splunk instance in AWS as an IaaS, and we set up Splunk Enterprise, and we were able to write a script that we deployed on every local computer and use the HTTP event collector to, whenever someone started iRacing or started their computer, the script ran and was able to start collecting the data and sending it into Splunk. Westy did a fantastic job of creating a dashboard that you see on the screen here, that we could actually, in real time, as we were getting ready to start our races, we could make sure that all 15 participants were sending data in the right amount into Splunk, so that way we weren't having to go back and re-index or re-ingest data later on. But yeah, so that's kind of how we got the data in. We also started looking at other data sources, again, outside of iRacing. Heart rate data was a really important one in 2019 in our road trip to Conf. And
no, Brett's Wi-Fi card turned off.
Heart rate data was interesting. We used it as well. We actually used the Health Post app that was it Ryan Kramer built, or was that who built it? I think we've got it listed here in a second. But basically, it was kind of interesting to start, like any conversation about data and with Splunk, it's not just about the one source of data that's interesting. It's about creating that context. So actually understanding how our race performance was affecting our kind of personal human performance was pretty fun to watch, to see, like, in stressful races, as Tom West was using an Android-based kind of health collector on his Samsung as like Gear or something like that. They collected stress data, and it was interesting to watch his stress data as the race progressed and got closer to the finish. Kind of interesting. That context, I think, is interesting, and that's what, if you think about what the F1 teams and racing teams in general are doing. They're trying to understand, how do you get the most out of your racing service, right? And so your service is the car, it's the track, but it's also the person in the seat. So it's I thought it was kind of a fun thing for us to start to pick at a little bit and start to understand, like, how do they all work together, and how do the challenges manifest themselves in the data. And Splunk made it pretty easy for us to do that. Tom, actually, this is I'll turn it over to you here.
Yeah, I was going to say, before we kind of transition to the next slide, just talking about the health data, the thing that we kind of thought, what, it would be something interesting. We'd have a look. We may discover something, we may not. I absolutely discovered something. So I think it was the Circuit of Americas race. I started in pole position, and earlier that day had been walking around the national park with the family. That involved a rather strenuous climb up a hill, pushing the buggy quite a way. And as you'd expect, It's your heart rate data goes up and down as you go up and down the hills, and didn't really think anything more of it. Did the race, finished in pole, qualified in pole, did most of the race, finished second overall, and realized that for a lot of that race I felt quite clammy. Had a look at my health data afterwards and realized and saw that my heart rate spiked only 4 BPM less than the most that it did on that walk around the national park, where we were pushing a buggy up the hill, and a really steep hill as well, to be fair. So it really shocked me how high my heart rate was, and for almost the entirety of the race it was above 100, and was well above average compared to that walk around the national park that day. I was stunned, to be fair. Corey mentioned the stress data. That's not really a surprise. I've seen that before. It's going to be 100 out of 100 nearly every day. What's kind of concerning is that it's less than 100 when I'm at work, but there we go. But the rest of the time, yeah, it was kind of what I expected. But for that race especially, I was surprised.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, sorry.
The irony being that the only person that's not had any sort of internet connection issues with the three of us so far is the guy that's based in the UK. Anyway, we'll move on. When it comes to bringing data to life, what we actually did with the data when we brought it in, well, we had a few different ideas. The first one being that we wanted to have a look to see if we could sync the data with YouTube, and we got some reasonable success with this. We were able to integrate with the YouTube API to actually work out exactly where the time where that individual's time marker is on the video that's embedded in the dashboard, and then link that back with the data to give a proxy real-time feel to what we're seeing. Someone who's put this deck together is kind of trolling, because no one's ever going to say JavaScript is fun. I appreciate that one. We did use JavaScript for that, but I'm never going to say that JavaScript is fun. I'm not a JavaScript developer, will never claim to be a JavaScript developer. I can read the docs, make it out as though I know what I'm doing, and produce something at the end of it. We did make quite a lot of use of the HEC to get the data in, mainly because that was the quickest way. Brett mentioned that we sent the data in less than a second. We aimed for every third of a second we would poll the data to get and send that in, because we had people racing from Australia, from the UK, from elsewhere in Europe, as well as the States, all sending into a single instance. There's going to be some fluctuation there as far as sending data in. Our baseline was always less than a second, and as part of that dashboard that Brett showed in the previous slide, we were able to achieve that, so that was good. The idea being that we were going to get as much data sent in as we could. We had a bunch of fields, an absolute load of fields that we needed to send in. We had to normalize that before we started racing, just to try and work out which ones were going to be really useful, and we'd send the rest in as a big JSON payload. Once we had all that data in, the races had been raced, and we were happy with it, we could then go and actually analyze which fields really contained data that we wanted to visualize, which ones had carried value, had use. And so we then started writing some summary searches that could then pick those out, convert those into metric data, and forward those to a metric index, which would allow us to display on the dashboards. And the reason we would use metrics is because, boy, is it fast. If you just send it into an event index, an event summary index, because we had upwards of 15 races sending in more than one event per second over 30 minutes, that's a lot of data to then try and display in a dashboard when you're trying to compare results, summarize, do goodness knows what with. And we found that using metrics, we were able to do that with most queries on the dashboard taking less than a second to run, to summarize, and then to visualize. So all that together was it was kind of a no-brainer, really. That was our workflow, and to be able to have that bulk event set of data to start off with, that meant that if we wanted to change something, if someone's data had failed to send through or if there were anomalies with time, for instance, then we could go and tweak that and send that data through again into the summary index, and almost get like a kind of a change log going, where we could see that version 1 of the data is what this looked like, version 2 is this, and so on. And we made good use of that through a lookup, which then we also used to add in customizations. The dashboards that you actually saw at the end, they were all powered just off a single lookup in terms of that look and feel. So we can see here that I'm gonna guess this is that the dashboard on here will be the first one, Indianapolis, which was sponsored by Red River Technologies. So therefore, we made sure that the color scheme for the dashboard matched their corporate colors. So red, white, grays, that kind of colors. Splunk's sponsored races, they were obviously more towards a Splunk color scheme. Dell's, Intel's, very much more blue, and it was the same dashboard, just powered off a lookup to be able to customize it to that kind of level. And that was really cool, just making use of CSS to do that. But rather than me just kind of talking about what they look like, I'm going to go and let Corey go on to the next slide and let our good friend Kyle, who's not here today, kind of walk through that in a little bit more detail. Over to you, Kyle. Good.
Wanted to give a quick overview of the overall Splunk dashboard, as well as some of the fun visualizations that we built with it. This is our key landing page for the race schedule environment. As you can see, it's a bit different and tricked out with JavaScript. Special thanks to Tom West. He did a wonderful job with this, so thank you, Westy. But we are showing our next race, as well as the location and our event sponsor. This was huge for us so that we could dynamically change things while still being able to keep a consistent layout across it. As you can see, we're able to hold the time, as well as the maps, the number of turns, and the length of each track as well. From here, when you click into this event, you will actually pull up a new screen here. From what we're able to see, the overall championship sponsor, or championship logo, as well as the race and the event sponsor as well. Again, we tried to keep a pretty common theme while still being able to make each page unique to maybe sponsor colors or dynamic layouts that they would like. From here, we can see that Splunk 3 won this race, so congratulations, as well as the laps completed, lead changes, and the fastest lap as well. Now, we also have a complete race overview, as well as laps completed, incidents, how many laps they were leading, average lap time versus their best lap time as well. Now, we can dive into filters here and take a look at lap performance, position, crash corner, where we're able to take a look at the amount of incidents each car was having in comparison with each other, individual performance of the car, as well as the vehicle status of the car, and then some of the health kit information as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at the lap performance, however. So we're going to do this, and for this race, let's take a look at Corey and myself. We'll take a look over here at a specific lap. Let's say maybe lap 4, and a specific metric as well. For this metric, let's go ahead and pick speed. Awesome. And here we can see the speed of myself and Corey and how we did compared to each other. So you can see Corey had me quite a bit here and there and was able to jump quite a bit on the gas better than me, and also take those turns a bit better. However, I was able to beat him out a couple times there as well. We can also take a look at brakes, throttle, gear, RPM, and the longitude and latitude acceleration, which is the amount of G's that were pulled in a specific direction as you were racing. As you can see here, this is a different race with a different sponsor. Thanks again to Red River for the sponsorship. And we were able to incorporate their logo and key colors into a design while still keeping a cohesive design pattern as well. So we were really proud of being able to dynamically change logos and colors in accordance to our sponsors while still keeping that cohesive look. Now, one thing I wanted to show as well was the live YouTube video that we were able to correlate the data against. So this is actually a YouTube video that is being played, and based upon the cars that are in the track and the time that the data was being generated by the YouTube video, we're able to show live race results through a Splunk dashboard as well. This was a huge technical undertaking for us that we were pretty excited about. If you have more questions about it, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to answer them. That does it for me, though, as far as the demo goes. We'll jump back into the slides and have some more fun.
Thanks, Kyle. So on with the tech enablers, we had to pull a bunch of different things together in order to actually get this all to work. So we got the data in for the rest of the team's health data. We used the Health Kit app that was so instrumental in showing all the health data that we showed last year. That was built by Ryan O'Connor and was really useful for us. We made sure that we sent all the information, all the data that we had in JSON format, because it's a really easy format to work with when within Splunk. Because we used Python as our main script to pull that data out of iRacing and get that into Splunk, we made sure that we took advantage of the Python's request library. There were a few tips and tricks that I learned in order to put this together, and a lot of them that I just kind of did at an extreme level can be found within the Splunk dashboard examples app. So that's a really great app to actually start getting an idea of how to do some of the things that we did here. And like I mentioned, we did use JavaScript a little bit, not as much as you would think, given how different the dashboards seem compared to a normal Splunk dashboard, mainly for the YouTube stuff, but we did make use of it there as well. And I'm going to pass back over to Corey for the learnt and shared part of this.
Yeah. So we learned some things. One, the Splunk community is incredibly helpful. When we've reached out to folks, they've collaborated with us. They've given us ideas and feedback. And so the Splunk community continues to be just awesome. We were blown away at how much speed we were able to get by using metrics. The HEC was incredibly useful for getting this JSON data in. The fact that we were able to look at different data sources during the same sort of time periods to give us context, we thought was, really powerful. And one of the other things that we kind of took away from this, which we're going to continue to kind of build on, is that, fun use cases like this, although it's, maybe seem like goofy, but it absolutely inspires our thinking and others thinking about how they can use Splunk to bring data to everything, right? It allowed us to have a kind of a platform to play and tinker with data and capabilities that we'd never really done before with Splunk. And so it was an incredible learning experience for us, and hopefully it inspired other folks to, don't be afraid to go Splunk goofy things and learn new skills. And it doesn't just have to be with, kind of your day job data. It can be with fun data on the side that may inspire you to do something better in your day job. And we're trying to give everything back, so you can find everything on our GitHub library. If you go to bigdatabeard.com, click on the Virtual Race To CONF20, there's links to everything that we've built. And it can use your own Splunk deployment, or you can use kind of the free downloads, however you get it. Big thanks to our sponsors. Splunk was the title sponsor for the entire racing series, but a big thanks to the folks at Red River, Dell Technologies, Intel, Arrow, and McLaren, who all were sponsors for our events, as well as Hippo Digital. And congrats to our winners. The Splunk team, Buttercup, won the race overall. I was able to come in second with Tom West bringing in third, but Tom West defended the honor of the Beards in the Beat the Beards Championship Series that we ran during the conference, and did not allow anyone to beat the Beards. Now, I will say that was a ton of fun, but we wanted to also make you aware that there's an upcoming series of events that's going to build on a lot of the things that we did here. One of the things that we realized is that, we learned a ton of things about Splunk and about getting data out of iRacing that we didn't necessarily expose everybody to and bring everybody along for the ride. And so we're actually going to be launching a series, the Big Data Beards partnering with Splunk to launch a series called Data Drivers. And Data Drivers is going to be a monthly set of events. Each month, starting next month, there will be a race. So if you want to get into iRacing and come race with us, we're going to be hosting a monthly race that anybody can join, as long as you're on iRacing and you can get yourself up and running there. We'll post, what tracks and car you need to be running. but it's going to be the GT3 classic car. So that'll be super fun. Everybody can come race with us on a monthly basis. And then we will actually be broadcasting those races with commentary from the Big Data Beard team and some Splunk experts on a monthly basis as a broadcast on Splunk's Twitch channel. Also, each month, we're going to be hosting a hackathon. And basically, it's going to be each hackathon event will be kind of tailored towards how do you do something interesting with Splunk using iRacing data. We're going to start with, basically setting up the series. How do you get access to our lab environments? We're going to be giving folks access to Splunk infrastructure monitoring, as well as a Splunk environment with Splunk ITSI. And then we're going to start exploring Splunk's IT-specific capabilities using iRacing data. So things like, okay, how do we get iRacing data into Splunk's infrastructure monitoring platform for metrics versus kind of doing it the traditional index path? And then how do you do things like build KPIs on those metrics and then turn those KPIs into a service and build a service health score? How do you do things like build glass tables that would be, really cool visualizations with overlays of predictive scoring on top of it? So those are going to be super fun, run every month again, kind of a series over the next 6 months. All of this will be made available officially via Splunk's. You'll see a Splunk blog here shortly, but you can just follow Splunk's official Twitch channel, which is in that link right there for all the broadcasts. And we encourage you, if you want to tinker with us, if you want to come racing with us, we'll share the link out to the user group as well. But with that, we'll say thank you very much to all of you, and we'll happily answer any questions.
Thank you. That was really cool, and I love how the success of this presentation partially depends on a globally distributed team of presenters.
Absolutely.
A globally distributed internet.
Yeah. I don't know if any specific questions. There were some chats, but I think you answered the question of where to find the stuff. Is go to bigdatabeards.com and it's there.
I'll just say what a way cool use case, right? I know with our own Splunk instance, we're always trying to come up with some cool examples to get people excited about it and to leverage the other capabilities of Splunk. This has got to be the best use case I've ever seen as far as getting people excited. Just in and of itself, it's very interesting, even if you didn't even care about Splunk, but then much less all the cool stuff you're doing within Splunk. Very cool. It must have been a lot of fun working on that.
It was.
It really was. Actually, one of the things we didn't mention that was kind of neat. If y'all haven't done any of the boss of the knock or boss of the sock capture the flag kind of games that they do, there was the boss of the knock team actually reached out to us, and they actually helped us build an episode in Boss of the Knock using the Big Data Beards virtual race and iRacing data. So we actually had the data in the Boss platform, and there was a bunch of questions where you could basically go in and interact with the data in the Boss capture the flag scenario, answer questions, get points. And it turns out it was actually the #1 most played episode of all of the Boss across the entire global conf, Boss and bots. So it's pretty fun, and look for more of that. We're actually, since all this has taken place, Kyle has actually joined Splunk as an IT strategist as well. And so Kyle and I are going to be using this iRacing data as a platform to help people understand Splunk's IT capabilities. So we're actually working on some workshops and other things that will be built on this data drivers thing. Because as you said, like, it doesn't always have to be like a hard, work-related scenario that gets you excited to go learn how to use a tool. Candidly, I think doing this is more fun. So we're going to try to make it more fun for everybody. Well, big thanks to everybody for allowing us to present this. If you have questions, again, no, Brett's there local in Boston, happy to be a conduit for you. But I just want to say thank you as a Splunker to a bunch of other Splunk fans in the community. Just continue to, you all make this thing awesome. And we're super thankful to be part of your ecosystem. Y'all have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right, so I don't know, as usual, the coordination for these things is happening in the Boston channel in Slack, and those who have been paying attention there. The next February presentation is being scheduled. Well, the schedule is set for now while we're virtual. It's every second Thursday of the month, or rather, the second Thursday of every month at the same time. So that's easy to keep track of. If you don't see the invite, but it looks like there are some problems with the system sending out invites and reminding people, then ask, because that seems to be something happening. But I'll also try to tag people in Slack to make that better. So next time we're gonna have someone come in and talk about the DevSecOps. I think it's a team sport, and the Splunk is doing a push for that week. Actually, happens to be the week that we're having our Splunk user group anyway. They're doing a push to have all the user groups have a meeting during that week, and they're raffling off an Oculus 2, I believe. I'm not sure how many across all the teams, all the user groups, but make sure you sign up and show up. And it's much harder to have side conversations in Zoom, so hi, everybody.
Hey, thanks a lot. Really looking forward to the next one, and I'm glad we could meet every month.
Yeah, it's good. Well, I don't know if anybody has anything to share or to discuss. Otherwise, I can just wrap it up here and see you on Slack.
Hey, if anyone scuba dives or is active with scuba diving, I'm working on getting data from my dive computer into Splunk and some dashboarding. So if anyone wants to play around with that, let me know.
That's cool.